Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Lyrically, I'm untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600. Untouchable, uncrushable. Running in a 600, running in a 600.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode here of Punch the Face Radio. I'm your host, Brandon Stubbs. I think you probably all know that I am in utter shock at what we saw here over the weekend. So feel free to call in to me and talk Canelo Triple G with me at area code 929-477-3165. Feel free to tweet me throughout the show if you're listening live at Brandon P2TF. So Brandon P2TF. On Twitter, you can give me a tweet in regards to anything boxing related. So, obviously, you're gonna talk here in a moment here in regards to Triple G Canelo, and as well as the top ranked card here Friday night, and the curious case of Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. But let me start off. Saturday was different. So let me just kind of start there. Now, I wasn't impressed by the fight. The fight was not what I expected to be. Was it a bad fight? No. But it was not what I expected it to be, by no stretch of the imagination. And I think a lot of us who watched the fight also left with the impression it was not what we thought it was going to be. We were looking for a toe-to-toe brawl, somebody possibly getting knocked out, and it never happened. It never came to fruition on Saturday. So I'm going to start there, and then I'll kind of delve into some other things. What we found out here Saturday night is, and something that, people are going to argue with me and tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not. Canelo does not have punching power. And that's to take nothing away from Triple G's chin, because he took some shots, but let's be frank. The guys that Canelo has knocked out recently, not so much known for having great chins. Amir Khan, that speaks for itself. James Kirkland has been knocked down and knocked out. But knocked out several times in fights. Not the greatest of all chins. And some of the other guys early in Canelo's career, these were guys he had the size advantage over. So in reality, he should bully and be able to be down. What we found out Saturday night, and something that I will, anyone who tells me any different, I will contest, is that Canelo does not have punching power. He just does not have it. And he hit Triple G with his left hook that he both floored Kirkland and Khan with. And Triple G's face moved, and then it went right back into place, and he went right back at him. So what that shows me is that punching power, this feared punching power that we saw in all these videos, it wasn't there. On the same aspect, I will give Canelo credit for having a chin, because he took some shots from Triple G a lesser man would have dropped from. So it makes me kind of wonder, is now Triple G on the decline? Or has he just been facing subpar opponents that made him look better than what he was? Now, we saw him kind of struggle against Daniel Jacobs. We saw the fight here this weekend where Canelo was never really out of the fight, per se. But Golovkin seemed to be in control, which I'll get into that in regards to scoring here in a few moments. But it was nothing that was overwhelming. It was nothing to where I said, whoa, he's blowing the sky out of the water. Is it now that he's facing better competition that we're seeing Triple G, I don't want to use the word exposed, but maybe we're seeing more of a reality of what of a fighter he is? It's very feasible. And I'm leaning more towards that. I don't think he's a bad fighter. I just think that now he's maybe faced one of the better middleweights there is in the world in Daniel Jacobs. He's fought a very gained and skilled fighter than Canelo Alvarez, and he couldn't stop him. So, I will give both guys credit there. But when I'm saying we didn't get the fight we thought we were going to see, no one got knocked down. Truth be told, no one was ever really hurt in the fight. We saw a very timid Triple G at times, especially early on in the fight. We saw Canelo that seemed to constantly be backpedaling, fighting off of with his back against the ropes. We just saw a very odd fight. And, Canelo tried to counter and was not countering well. He was missing a lot of shots. And let me say this as well. CompuBox numbers, don't ever give me CompuBox numbers. CompuBox numbers are bullshit, and that's been a proven theory. As far as someone being able to count punches live and how they're landing and how effectively they're landing as they're landing is bullshit. So CompuBox numbers, don't give me those stats. Don't ever quote those to me because it's complete bullshit, especially as the fights are going on. Now, if somebody's looking at the fight, and a day later gives me these numbers, okay, that's different. But live during the fight, no, fuck off. It's CompuBox numbers are garbage. Now, let me get to the actual fight itself. Now, would I want to see a rematch, given the fact it was a draw? No. And let me first start off by saying, do I think it was correct to have a draw? I'm not going to say 100% no. I did score the fight for Triple G. I had him winning 115-113. I can see a 114-114 card. I can see Golovkin winning maybe even 116-112, possibly. But 115-113 looks to make the most sense. I can even see Canelo winning 115-113 because there were close rounds. But there was no way in this world that fight was scored 118-110. There's no way. There's no way anyone who watched that fight could see Canelo winning 10 rounds out of 12. No way. And, again, this is not to be disrespectful against Canelo or Triple G in any regards, but there's no way. Now, on last week's poll here for Punch to Face Radio, and oddly enough, I got to say this, shout out to Adam Abramowitz, SN Boxing on Twitter. When I put the poll up, he was very adamant when he messaged me about the poll. He said, make sure that you put up draw as an option of who will win the fight. And oddly enough, we had nobody vote on it. No one voted draw. While 25% of voters looked for Canelo to win, 70% looked for Triple G to win. But the other vote was the judges were going to screw somebody. And guess what? The judges screwed both. That was 5% of the vote. And that's what we saw. We saw the fans and the fighters get screwed. Again, I have no problem with the draw. I really don't. How we got to the draw is where I have my problem. And where I have my problem with is with Adeline Bird. This isn't the first time Adeline Bird, or however you enunciate her name, this isn't the first time she screwed up scoring. Unfortunately, this will not be the last time she screws up scoring, because the state of Nevada will continue to keep her employed. We'll still let her husband be employed as well. He's a judge. So, these two are going to continue to be employed and have no reason to be employed. Bird is awful. Adeline Bird is awful. And it's a shame that she affected such an important fight for not only these two fighters, but both promotions, and also not to mention for the fans. You see, boxing needed this fight to be a clean fight for whoever won. Because just a couple of weeks ago, we had a shenanigans circus out in Vegas, oddly enough. And this fight between Canelo and Triple G was to clean that up. That was to bring boxing back. It was to show that boxing was a real thing. Show the casual fans, hey, this is what a real fight looks like. And we got that. We got action. We got two guys who went toe-to-toe, put on the line, fought very competitively for 12 rounds. Now, it's always going to be in everyone's eye in regards to the judgment of who won. So if the scores are close, no one's going to have a problem. No one's going to have a beef with that. When people have problems with judges who have no idea what the fuck they're doing, Adeline Byrd has no idea of what she's doing. I'm going to play you some audio of what Miss Byrd, how she explains how she conducts her scoring when she's looking at a fight. So this is an interview that she did. So shout out to Twitter for posting this up. This is how she explains when she's looking at a fight, how she scores it.
But it has to be the fighter who is throwing and landing cleaner punches. Sometimes it's dictating the pace of the fight. Who has a good defense? He's making his opponent miss punches. Just clean, effective punches. That's how I determine who's winning the fight.
Do you go for quantity or quality punches?
Well, now that depends on you, because you can have a boxer and you can have a puncher. Now, usually the boxer is going to throw more punches and land more punches, and the boxer may only land two solid punches, for example, in a round, but then you have to determine that those two solid punches outweigh many effective punches that the boxer landed, and usually the boxer is going to win that round unless the puncher, those two punches that landed, unless they staggered or buckled the fighter. Other than that, in my opinion, quantity usually outweighs quality.
So quantity can outweigh quality, is what she's saying. She's stating that if a puncher lands two good shots that stagger somebody in a round, but they were getting drubbed on for the other part of the round, well, that puncher who landed those two shots, they win the round. It's a shame. It's a shame that she's still employed by the state of Nevada. Now, she is underneath review as we speak right now by the Nevada Athletic Commission in regards to her scoring. This isn't the first time we've had issues with her scoring. This won't be the last. She's also been yanked off of UFC 216 that she was set to do judging on here, I think 216 here in 2 months or a month and a half. That's also a problem. Let me take this up here with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. I know there's not a ton of judges, but maybe you can do a better job of scouting judges. Maybe you can have a designated group of judges who do MMA. You have a designated group of judges who do boxing. You shouldn't have judges who do both, because apparently if they're not good at one, they're probably not going to be good at the other. And that's what we have with Adeline Byrd. Not only is she not good at judging boxing, she's pretty shitty at MMA as well. Now, the bright side with MMA, she hasn't screwed up any of those royally, and thank God a lot of those fights do end up via stoppages, so her cards haven't came into play that much, knock on wood, but it would be only a matter of time before she completely screwed that up as well. So, she ruined a night in Vegas for a lot of people. Again, if she would have scored the fight closer for Canelo, I would have no problem. I would not be going to the rant night right now. I wouldn't be calling her an idiotic bitch right now. I wouldn't do that if she scored it close. But she didn't. So, it's people like her who continually do a bad job, who unfortunately give women painted a bad light in the sport of boxing. It's because of people like Adeline Byrd. It's because of her. It's because you have the guys in boxing say, this person doesn't know what they're doing, because they get stereotyped because of people like her who do continually screw up over and over and over again. So thanks to her now, we get a rematch that we probably don't need. Negotiations right now underway between both parties, both teams. There was a rematch clause on Canelo's side that sounds like he is exercising. And truth be told, we really don't need an immediate rematch. We really don't. The fight was entertaining, but it wasn't what I think a lot of us expected to be. A lot of us forked down money to watch it. It was sold out there in the T-Mobile Arena. They even opened up additional standing room only seats. They sold a lot of closed circuit tickets while out there. So the fight from the fight business aspect was great. It didn't clamor leaving us wanting an immediate rematch, because we all know from watching that Triple G won the fight, even if it was close. But we don't need an immediate rematch. We really don't. I don't want to see it right now. And the fighters really didn't seem overly enthused about it. I think, if you looked at the body language after the fight, and granted both guys, said the correct answers. They should have won, and Canelo was talking about how he thought he won and what have you. But you can also tell when the scores were read that, the energy was just zapped out of them. They were done. The bright side is the rumors are floating out there that if the rematch does happen immediately, it won't be in Las Vegas. That's something that both teams looks like they're going to try to fight and get it, not have it there. California, New York, and Texas is maybe also an option down in Dallas. So these are all options that could bring the fight there into another jurisdiction to score the fight. Honestly, if they're going to go that route, New York or California would be better. Texas is even worse than Nevada in regards to their judges and their refs. But now we're going to get a rematch that we really don't need immediately. It was nothing that happened immediately, that we really immediately need that. Now, I'd ask the question here on this week's Face to Face Radio poll, are you okay with this fight being scored a draw? You had four options. The first option was the fight was fixed, just have a rematch. No one voted there. So, no one thinks this was purposely done to generate more revenue for a rematch. 21% of the people said Bird's an idiot. 37% say yes, they are okay with the score, but score being scored a draw. But 42% of the voters say no, they are not okay with it being notated as a draw. Will that 42%, will they be willing to watch an immediate rematch? We'll see. But it's something I'm not running myself in the ground to go watch again. It was a good fight, but not what I expected. Unfortunately, this leaves a couple people in limbo. Obviously, it leaves the two fighters involved, Canelo and Triple G, in limbo. But it also leaves two guys who have recently fought and were possibly looking at, the winners or even the loser as an opponent. Let's first start off with Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders won, defending his middleweight championship, one of his version of the belt, over in the UK here over the weekend with Willie Monroe Jr. and a very nondescript, boring fight, truth be told, that happened a couple hours before Triple G and Canelo happened. Maybe the only exciting point about this fight was the weigh-in, as everyone has seen the photo or the video of Billy Joe Saunders' son hitting Willie Monroe and kicking him, and Willie Monroe also stating later that the kid called him the N-word. So, needless to say, Billy Joe Saunders sounds like he's a real cunt of a parent, but whatever. So he was, obviously wanting the winner of Saturday night's fight, preferably Triple G, because Triple G would have had all the belts, and, make a unification bout. Well, now that leaves Saunders kind of up in the air. This also leaves Miguel Cotto up in the air. Now, there was a rumor that, and not really a rumor, I mean, it's kind of the obvious. Miguel Cotto was there. We all know that he has made it very clear that he is retiring at the end of this year. So, he was sitting back and looking and possibly wanting the winner of this fight, maybe even a rematch with Canelo out of this if Canelo were to win. But even, he was a former middleweight champion. Maybe he would be willing to go back up in weight to face Gennady Golovkin. So now that leaves him in limbo. Now, will Billy Joe Saunders and Miguel Cotto fight? Highly doubt that. It doesn't make really much sense for either guy at this juncture, but you never know. They're both out there. They both have no opponents because it looks like we're going to get this rematch. Now, the other news of the day in regards to this is Cotto may sneak in there and actually may get the Triple G fight before the year is out, and then Canelo Triple G2 would happen next Cinco de Mayo. That's the rumor. That remains to be seen. I wish Miguel Cotto the best of luck. As a fan, I don't like the matchup. I would prefer not to see it. But, beggars can't be choosers. This isn't Chipotle. So I don't know what he's going to do. I hope that's not the route he goes, but stranger things have happened. So there's that. Now, another thing that also made the card here on Saturday night, a little less, I don't want to say a little less, it was quite lackluster, was the undercard. I know a lot of us don't order the pay-per-views to watch the undercard bouts, but if we're spending $60, $70, $80, $100 for these pay-per-views, we at least want to see something entertaining. And unfortunately for us, we watched 3 undercard fights that were not entertaining. Let's just call it how it is. Those were very boring fights, and they didn't do anything for us. Now, first off, we had Ryan Martin, the blue chip fighter, as he is called. Not impressive, truth be told. Just not really impressed by him. I mean, it's no other way of saying it. I was just really not impressed. You know, we've heard about him. He's, you know, this kind of a prospect that has been working a lot here with K2 Promotions. They're kind of high on him there in the lightweight division, but the 2 opportunities we've seen him on larger cards. He was part of a Triple G's fight card here against Daniel Jacobs this past March. He did win via TKO, but then he had kind of a letdown here in June. He ended up decision win over Marcos Jimenez, and then this past Saturday he had a split decision win over Francisco Roja in a fight that it just seemed like he was sleepwalking in at times. And I don't see him really winning a split decision there. I thought Roja might have done enough early on, and, you know, Martin did come on late. But, you know, for this guy being a quote-unquote blue-chip prospect and a guy that's supposed to have a bright future and, you know, can maybe grow into being something in the lightweight and junior welterweight divisions going forward, I don't see it. Granted, he's only 24. Yes, he's only gotten 20 career fights. But when you start labeling someone as a blue chipper and all this, we should see a lot more from him than what we saw here on Saturday. I didn't see anything on Saturday that says, I need to watch this guy fight. I didn't see it. There's just nothing that was really a pure entertainment to me. I thought it was kind of a poor showing. So, you know, it is what it is in that regards. We'll probably see him again because K2 is going to probably try to force him down our throat a little bit. But well, like I said, I was not real impressed by him. The other fight that was actually on the card that was actually pretty good, but it just again the Ryan Martin's fight before it kind of sucked the energy out was Diego De La Hoya versus Randy Caballero. Randy Caballero. It was actually a really entertaining fight because both guys were kind of evenly skilled. But one thing that I'm noticing with De La Hoya more and more with each fight that we see him in more, since he's signed with Golden Boy and is now getting opportunity to be seen more on American television, is his work rate, his footwork, his movement. He's really starting to become and look a polished fighter. And he had a very game and legitimate opponent in front of him in Caballero, who was there to fight. I mean, flat out, let's just call it what it was. Second best fight of the night on the pay-per-view next to Canelo Triple G. It was, a lot of back and forth action. De La Hoya won via unanimous decision, but Caballero did nothing to discredit his name. It's going to be one of those things. I do want to see him again fight in the future. I do want to see more of him in the future because I think he's going to grow from this. He's only 26. He's going to get better. De La Hoya's 23. He's really going to get better. But I think for him, if he really wants to be a crossover star and truly be something big, if you will, in regards to the world of boxing and really make an impact in the bantamweight and super bantamweight division, he's going to start having to lay some more guys out. These last 5 wins have all been unanimous decision wins. They've all went to the cards. It's going to be important for him to go out and actually get some stoppages here again. He hasn't had a string of stoppages since early on in his career when he's fighting much lesser opponents. His time has worn on, and he's stepped up and faced more somewhat accomplished fighters. He's had some problems getting some of these guys out of here. It's not to say that he's not beating them down and beating them up. He's just not getting them out of there at the pace and the rate that he probably should be doing that at. So I'm impressed by Diego De La Hoya. Want to see more of him, and really, like I said, impressed on how he seems to be improving every fight out we see him. Now, the other fight there on the undercard was, let me go back here, was Joseph Diaz. Joseph Diaz is kind of an interesting guy. He fought Rafael Rivera, who's a late replacement, who's actually maybe even somewhat of an original opponent. That was kind of weird. His Diaz's original opponent ended up hurting his back on Tuesday of last week. Rafael Rivera steps in. Rivera was actually one of the original opponents for Diaz. They had some issues with some of the sanctioning bodies and being a title eliminator fight. But, that's neither here nor there. Joseph Diaz wins, and, he wins via unanimous decision over Rafael Rivera. Diaz, another very polished guy, Olympian, very charismatic guy, definitely has the tools outside of the ring to be a star. Unfortunately, in the division he's in, he's going to have a lot of tough sledding going forward. Now, with his win here Saturday night, he became the mandatory for Gary Russell Jr. I don't see any way, shape, or form that Joseph Diaz at this juncture of his career is going to be able to deal with Gary Russell. And Gary Russell's a guy that I often we mock in boxing because of his reluctancy to fight at times. He's had a lot of issues getting fights done. Let's just call it what it is. So, I don't know what Gary Russell really how great he's going to be because we just haven't seen him fight enough, unfortunately. But he is now the WBC champion. With Joseph Diaz's win here on Saturday night, he is now listed as the mandatory for Gary Russell. What we've seen with Gary Russell is he is an elite fighter. He is a good fighter. He did lose against Lomachenko, but Lomachenko's kind of a different breed, if you will. Russell still has the skills to be a very great and even, like I said, elite level fighter, especially in the anywhere from 130 to 122 range. Any of those guys, even 135, I think he could still go up even that high and can still be good and still be great. Joseph Diaz just does not have those tools from what I've seen this far of his career to where I can say in a fight for a major title he's going to be able to do much. Because what we're seeing with Diaz is he has the punches, he has the skill, but he does not have the power behind them to really effectively do something. And as you move up and you face higher caliber guys here at the featherweight division, I don't see Diaz being able to keep a guy like Leo Santa Cruz off of him. Santa Cruz has a tremendous work rate. I don't see him being able to keep a guy like him off of him and make him respect his power. Cruz will walk right through what Diaz is throwing. Kind of the same way with Lee Selby, who's a very tough-nosed guy from over in the UK. Oscar Valdez, who I'll talk about later, who I just love. And then, like I said, Gary Russell Jr., who not only has tremendous hand speed, maybe some of the best hand speed in boxing today, but he's got power. He's got legit pop. We've seen him, drop some guys. He's got pop to go with that power. And I just don't think at this juncture Joseph Diaz can deal with that. I just don't. Best of luck to him. I think he can, definitely, still make some interesting fights at 126. And as he grows, granted he's only 24, as he grows and he moves up to 130 and a 135, he can make interesting fights. I just don't see him being able to make interesting fights to actually do something to stop some of these top caliber guys who are going to be in front of him, who are going to be throwing everything but the kitchen spaghetti. I don't see it. So, that's why I'm not overly impressed by his win over Rafael Rivera. Shout out to Rivera, who took the fight short notice, was training for another fight, but stood in there, stood tall, didn't make a mockery of himself while they're in the ring. He did the best he could. But Diaz was able to really just flat out outwork him to win the fight. Also in the undercard, though, a couple of people I do want to recognize. Shout out to Marlene Esparza. She's now 3-0 in her career, former guest here on Punch the Face Radio. She won another unanimous decision here. She was one of the early fights there at the T-Mobile Arena. And also Virgil Ortiz. There's another guy the Golden Boy Boxing is really high on. He's out of Texas. He's only 19. This guy is literally, he was born, I was like a sophomore in high school. It's crazy to think that. He's 7-0. He's staying busy. Just turned pro here last year. All of his wins are stoppages because he's getting these guys out of there that he should be getting out. He's getting them out. So he's a guy that, Golden Boy's really high on. He's a super lightweight. Time will tell how he'll develop. One thing that we've seen with Golden Boy, with their fighters, they're not going to rush any of these kids along, which is completely the smart thing to do. They are trying to build them through that ESPN deal, through these undercard bouts here, these bigger fights that Canelo puts on. So, they're doing what they should do and doing it in a proper light. So, salute to them. So, that's my recap here in regards to Canelo Triple G. As a whole, I'm just, the scoring left a sour taste in my mouth to where I don't, it's bad to say this, but I just don't care if we see a rematch. I'm still so close to the fight to where I don't really care if we see a rematch right now. That sentiment and that feeling will obviously change for me as we go on a little bit further. We distance ourselves from the event, but right now I just want no parts of it. It just does nothing for me, but we'll see. But salute to all of those who were out there in Nevada, out there in Vegas Saturday night. I know from seeing some of the tweets from my friends out there and some of the photos, everybody had a fantastic time. Hopefully I'll be able to see you out there next Cinco de Mayo and maybe next Mexican Independence Day weekend. 2 big weekends for boxing here that I'll be looking forward to in 2018. So shout out to everybody who was out there and enjoyed themselves. This weekend, though, we have a couple of different cards that are interesting. The first one is Top Rank has a card here Friday night that is kind of sort of flying under the radar. This is kind of a funny thing. Terrence Crawford brought this up when his fight had happened about him not getting promoted as much compared to Lomachenko in regards to Manny Pacquiao, the couple of weeks before him. He felt that he didn't get promoted on ESPN the same way that those guys' fights were. Well, I kind of feel that same sentiment about this weekend's fight here Friday night on ESPN when Gilberto Ramirez and Jessie Hart will fight Oscar Valdez defending his featherweight championship. I just don't feel that we've gotten enough buzz about it on ESPN to where people will know it. And the sad part is these are actually two really good young fighters Top Rank is putting on. I also want to say I think it's the Michael Conlon kid, the Irish Olympian, he's actually going to be fighting on this card as well. They're keeping him busy. This is going to be his fourth fight here of 2017 since turning pro. We just saw him here in July down on the Manny Pacquiao Jeff Horn undercard, so he's going to be on there again as well. So I'm assuming they're probably going to try to make some TV time for him. I'm assuming we're going to see him fight on television. So, yeah, it's neither here nor there in regards to that. But this weekend, they're going to have a card here on ESPN live from Tucson, Arizona. Gilberto Ramirez versus Jessie Hart for Ramirez's WBO's middleweight championship. Oscar Valdez versus Genesis Cervania. We'll go with that. For his WBO World Featherweight title. First one I want to kind of start off with talking about is Oscar. We'll start off with Oscar Valdez. Oscar Valdez is one of these kids that really he's poised to be one of boxing's next big stars. He's a guy that I don't really genuinely like saying I like watching fighters fight, but I like watching this kid fight. I'm really impressed by his work rate, his power, his speed, everything that encompasses that. I think he does a really good job of. I've always been impressed by what he does there in ring. So I'm looking forward to seeing him fight here on Friday. Now, I don't know much about his opponent. I will openly say that here in Genesis Cervania. Again, I think that's the closest we're going to get to that enunciation tonight. Genesis is actually going to be making his first fight here in the U.S. All of his fights to this juncture in his career have been over in Asia and in the Philippines. So we don't know a ton about him. He is 29-0. He has stopped his last opponent here this past April. Hasn't been overly active here the last 2 years. one fight so far here in 2017. He only had one fight also last year as well. So inactivity is never a good thing as a fighter. Even at the age of 26, that's not good. In his case, for Oscar Valdez, Valdez is a guy that, Top Rank is trying to slowly but surely cultivate and really want to get him more attention and more noticeable here to the masses. Kind of had I don't want to say a coming out party, if you will, but, he was a part of the Jessie Vargas Manny Pacquiao card here last November. I thought he did a great job. He was honestly one of my favorite fights there of the night against Horsewar Osawi. I'm probably butchering that name as well. But I thought he looked really good in that fight card. And really since then, I've kept him out and watched a lot of his older fights before that to get myself more familiar with him. But he's a kid that he's improving. He's really improving from, if you looked at some of his fights from 2015 to the few fights he had last year and even the fight he's had so far this year, you see him steadily improving. We see the power. We see the movement. We see the hand speed. We see the coordination. We see all the things there to where this kid could be something special. And it's going to be all about how Top Rank pushes him, how they promote him, how they use him in the proper light. If they don't try to throw him out there too soon to the people, they don't try to give him, tougher fights than what he needs right now. And I think they're doing a really good job of doing that right now. They're pacing him in the correct direction. There are going to be bigger fights, for him there in the featherweight division. Like I said, he's one of the title holders. But there's also guys like Gary Russell Jr., like I said, Lee Selby, who holds a title, and as well as Lito Santa Cruz, Abner Mares, Jesus Rojas, Rios or Rojas, who owns the WBA title or interim title. WBA has like 3 technical champions right now. Santa Cruz, Mares, and Jesus all own a version of the WBA title. So he can fight even 3 of those. Technically, he'd be fighting a champion. But there are fights for him. And, there's even been talk, a lot of boxing fans kind of want to see the cannibalism of Top Rank and Golden Boy and have Valdez fight a guy like Joseph Diaz. And that would not end well, but it would be fun to watch while it lasted. This time around, I don't see him having much of any issues here with Genesis Cervania here this Friday night. Like I said, the skill set is just one of those. It's growing, it's building. You can tell he's going to have the composition, especially years down the road, of being one of those just tough, hard-nosed Mexican fighters. And that's not a disparaging remark in any way. It's just he has the makeup of being one of those guys like a mode of a Juan Manuel Marquez, who not only has the skill set but has the balls to get the job done in ring. That's what I could see Oscar Valdez, as a whole, when his career is really at its apex and it's cultivating. He's going to be that kind of guy. He's going to have that, not saying style-wise or anything like that, but just as a persona in ring, just going to be skilled and just tough as nails. That's what I like about him. I like watching him fight. So I'm really interested to see him work here come Friday night. The fight that's, I guess, Gilberto Ramirez and Jessie Hart is the main event. I'm not 100% sure. According to the bout sheet, looks like they are. Excuse me. Let me get some more here of this Modelo beer. I'm having a drink here on tonight's show. For Gilberto Ramirez, this is only going to be his second fight since he had hand surgery here back in 2016. Truth be told, he didn't look that great in his return bout following the surgery here against Max Bursak here in April. He kind of looked a little bit lethargic. He was able to get the job done, was able to defend his title, but he just didn't seem great in there. Just probably the best way to describe him. He really didn't seem great. But he did enough to win a unanimous decision. This is going to be his 3rd title defense when he faces Jessie Hart here on Friday night. I say this, and people are going to probably say I'm a bit crazy for thinking this, but you have to maybe look at this. When he's healthy, Ramirez could be really the guy to beat at 168 pounds. Because let's face it, it's kind of a weird spot right now in that division. You don't really know who's what and doing what. We know David Benavidez is now a champion. He won a couple weeks ago, winning a vacant WBC title. George Groves is out there, but he's a part of the World Boxing Super Series. James DeGale holds the championship, but he hasn't fought. Andre Dirrell technically is the IBF interim super middleweight champion. But he's got issues in regards to getting a fight and actually not having his uncle jump in the ring and assault people. So that leaves Gilberto Ramirez as really the only guy who doesn't have somewhat of an issue as a champion. And if he's healthy, and what we've seen, before the hand injury, and even when he suffered the hand injury and still fought the rest of the fight, is that he's really good and he's really skilled and he hits really hard, which is all bad things for people there at 168. Now, he hasn't had a stoppage here in a couple of years. He hasn't actually stopped anyone here since 2014, but that's not to say that he hasn't completely dominated his opponents he's faced since then. This could be a prime weekend for him to get back on track and actually get a stoppage win and kind of get that buzz building again. He's going to be possibly the more feared guy here at 168. Jessie Hart is a solid fighter, but Jessie Hart's biggest weakness is his chin. And in boxing, that's not a good thing. We've seen in some of these fights, Hart just doesn't seem like he has a lot of the punching power to get some guys out of here. Granted, I know people are going to say, well, he's got some wins over some guys here and there, but these are not really top-level guys he's beaten in regards to this. This is easily going to be the toughest fight of his career to this point. So this is it. This is going to be a major stepping stone for Jessie Hart. This is his first title fight, first major title fight. Let me put it to you that way for him. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts to that. Now, he can't have another slip up like he had last year against Deshaun Johnson in Philadelphia. He got hit, was almost out of his feet. He can't have anything weird like that happen. And unfortunately for him, Gilberto Ramirez, if he's healthy, and that's the key, if he's healthy and he can land some of those clean shots, it's not going to be a fun night for Jessie Hart. I've never been really impressed in the fights I've seen of Jessie Hart throughout his career, especially now over the last 2 years that Top Rank started really pushing. I've yet to be really impressed and see what makes him so, attractive to some people. I know he's got a strong base in Philadelphia fan base, but I don't see it from a technical aspect of him being that entertaining. I just don't. Or him being that good here at 168. I think Gilberto Ramirez is going to expose him. He's going to knock him out. So I like both Ramirez and Oscar Valdez to pick up W's here on Friday night, a part of that card here on ESPN. So, again, ESPN Friday night, 2 title fights, and also Matthew Conklin is going to be on the card as well. So we have those fights. Excuse me. And as well, there's going to be fights here Saturday night. Now, obviously, HBO is going to replay Canelo Triple G for all those who missed it, want to watch it again. I suggest if you watch it again, watch it on mute so you don't have to hear Max, Jim Lampley, and Roy Jones Jr. But after that, we get a title fight. And it's kind of an interesting title fight. And I said we have another title fight as well I'll talk about. That also go down here on Saturday. But it's kind of an interesting title fight. Jorge Linares versus Luke Campbell. Not the Luke Campbell from 2 Live Crew. Luke Campbell, who is a Olympian from the UK. For Linares, he had really made his killing and his popularity over the last 2 or 3 years fighting outside of the U.S. He had a rough couple of years here in the States. He suffered back-to-back losses. He suffered a bloody beating from Antonio DeMarco here back in 2011. That's kind of what a lot of American fans are going to remember him for. that fight and him just getting completely tore up in that fight and what have you, and then kind of later blaming Freddie Roach. A year later, not a year later, a couple months later in 2012, he lost another fight to Sergio Thompson. And for the most part, he pretty much disappeared. So Golden Boy didn't completely abandon him per se, but they knew that they had to rebuild him. And that's kind of what they did. He fought a lot of smaller fights and undercard fights here in the U.S. when he did fight, but he fought overseas. He fought over in Mexico. He fought several times over in Japan. He actually won his championship belt over Jorge Petrito, if I'm not saying that right, here back in 2014 over in Japan. He then would go over and defend the belt over in the UK 3 times. 2 fights against Anthony Corolla, very good fights against Anthony Corolla, where he came out on top, winning an decision in both of those. He also went over and fought in was it Caracas? I think that's how he enunciated, and defended his title as well. So he's went over, he's fought, defended titles overseas, and now this is going to be the first time in a major televised bout for him back in the States, really since the Antonio DeMarco fight here 6 years ago. Really strange that we're all of a sudden seeing you back on now. That's mainly because HBO doesn't have many fighters to choose from in regards to the promotions they work with, and Golden Boy does have dates there. So I mean, this is an opportunity for him to kind of build himself back up here with the American fan base. It's not going to be an easy go, unfortunately, for him. Luke Campbell is a guy who is, yes, he does have a loss, but a former Olympian, 29 years old. He's riding right now a 5-fight win streak. 4 of those are all stoppages. So, I don't know. We kind of wonder about him because he hasn't fought top-tier competition. This is going to be his first fight, his second fight ever over in America. The first fight he had was in America. It was almost 4 years ago. But all of his fights have been over in the UK. They haven't been against tremendously great talent. Darlis Perez, maybe the most recognizable name. A part of that, he did get a stoppage win against him here this past April. So, I mean, he's not going out and fighting top world beaters. So this is going to be his biggest competition to this point in his career. So it should be interesting. It really should be interesting. It's really interesting about being picked up here by HBO to show. And, props to Golden Boy for pushing and going forward with it. But Jorge Linares, man, I just got a funny feeling about him returning to American television and not ending up being well for him. Again, here back on the stateside being on television. Also on the card is Antonio Orozco versus Roberto Ortiz. I think that fight's also going to get showed. Orozco's a guy, again, another guy the Golden Boy's really high on and wanting to kind of push over and see if he can kind of go to the next level. He's currently the WBC United States super lightweight champion. He's coming off of a TKO win here back in April against Andre Gibson, where he actually won that belt. So he's going to be defending that belt here against Roberto Ortiz. For Ortiz, he is a guy who's been around, 31 years old, 35 wins, only 1 loss to his credit. He is coming off of a draw against Diego Cruz down in Mexico this past July. So kind of a quick turnaround from him. Fought July 1st, going to be back in the ring here on September 23rd. So kind of an interesting and short turnaround for him to be back at it. But, hey, we'll see. Sometimes that's kind of the best thing to do when you have a tough loss to get back at it. So we'll see. I don't know much about Roberto Ortiz. He's only fought in the States 1 time, and I do remember that fight. It was a knockout loss to Lucas Matisse back here in 2014. That's one of his career losses. That's his only long career loss, a knockout to Lucas Matisse. So when he stepped up in competition, he has lost. All of his other opponents are fights down in Mexico. So, who knows about that. So he should be, at least a body and a legit a test for Orozco. But he is a guy that, like I said, Antonio Orozco is a guy that Golden Boy's really high on. Want to see him do good things. So it'd be great for him if he gets a stoppage win over a very doable guy in Ortiz, but we shall see. So that happens here on Saturday. Also on Saturday, finally, Joseph Parker versus Hughie Fury is happening. It's one of those things, though, I'll still believe it when it actually happens, because anytime you have anyone with the last name Fury and boxing, you just never know if they're actually going to show up, if everything will go fine before the weigh-in or at the weigh-in. You just literally never know when it comes to the fighters with the last name Fury. But, it's finally going to happen. Hughie Fury has been wanting this fight here against Joseph Parker. It's got delayed several times, but now it's finally here. First fight for Fury here of 2017. I don't want to say a lot's not known about him. He's fought kind of subpar guys over in the UK. Maybe he's Freddie Cassie. He's got a win over him. Dominic Gwynn, he's got a win over him here last year. Those were both from his fights here last year that he won. But nothing great on the resume. And kind of even the same way with Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker's a guy that we really don't know a ton about fighting down there in New Zealand. Yes, he's undefeated at 23-0. Maybe his best win to his career is a majority decision win over Eddie Ruiz Jr. here last year. So he hasn't fought, top-tier guys at this juncture. But quite honestly, in heavyweight division right now, there's not a lot at the top. So everything that's below the top tier is really thin and really watered down. But, Joseph Parker's a guy that we still don't know a ton about. If he can get past Hughie Fury, it's, he could be lined up to facing Deontay Wilder in a unification bout next year, and then that winner facing more than likely Anthony Joshua at some juncture. It's going to be some sort of round robin of either Parker facing Anthony Joshua first or Parker facing Deontay Wilder first. I don't see Wilder-Joshua happening before Parker fights one of the two. But, he's first got to get past his opponent here this weekend in order to make that fight happen. I don't see him having much issue with Hughie Fury. I think Hughie's the lesser talented of the Fury family. But this is boxing. This is heavyweight boxing. One punch can change a lot of different things. Once people get to swinging, you just don't know. You don't know what can happen come fight night. So we actually have a lot of fights here going on. So that's good. We also have, I know there's another fight this weekend in the World Boxing Super Series. Forgive me for not knowing which one it is. There's pretty much a fight every Saturday going forward. You'll be able to watch through their website. But that's all there really is in regards to fights this weekend. Excuse me here. But, let me kind of get my throat together before I go on a tangent here about Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Now, here we're live here on Wednesday, so if you're listening to this on iTunes, for starters, thank you for listening. And secondly, I thank you for subscribing if you haven't subscribed to iTunes. So, for those who are listening live or listening here on Blog Talk, make sure you subscribe to Punch to the Face Radio on iTunes. Just search Punch to the Face Radio, and it's always the number 2. So Punch to the Face Radio. You'll be able to find all the podcasts, all the shows, all 40-plus shows we've done thus far, and you'll be able to subscribe to where you never miss one in the future. So as we do this here live on Wednesday, Tuesday here, so September the 19th, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. took to social media to say, hey, I'm coming back and I'm fighting. And we're like, oh, all right, well, that's cool. So for those who have chosen to forget the last time we saw Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., well, let me rephrase it. The last 2 times we see Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., one, we saw him pretty much being a stationary target for Saul Canelo Alvarez here during Cinco de Mayo weekend this past year and getting beat up. And then we saw him a couple of days later as regards to footage being leaked of him looking to be quite inebriated in bed in his room with 2 very unsavory women. We'll call them hookers or whores. We're not sure which one they were, or they're kind of much one and the same. And then saying he pretty much got robbed. So I kind of hoped that after all of that, he would kind of fade into oblivion and we would never see Junior again. But unfortunately, no. Junior plans on coming back here November the 11th. Now, he had said here on his social media that he's fighting Anthony Durrell. He was excited about coming back, yada, yada. So he plans on coming back here fighting on November the 11th at the Forum in Los Angeles. Well, the problem with that is that Anthony Durrell actually was being interviewed by a newspaper up in Michigan, and he says, don't believe that. He is not fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Instead, Anthony Durrell says, nope, he is fighting here November 17th, and he is facing Dennis Douglas. Television network hasn't been named for that or and what have you, but, yeah, he's fighting Dennis Douglas. So that leaves a couple of different holes and a lot of questions here. For starters, both these guys are advised by Al Heyman. Apparently, someone got the contracts mixed up. And more importantly, if you're Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and his team, why take the social media with a fight that's not signed, if it was truly not signed? And by the sounds of it, Anthony Durrell already had something planned, because if he already has opponent names, he even had a venue name for it as well. He had said that, he was, he's got somebody else in mind. So I don't get that. So where's the communication breaking up at? Is it breaking up with Chavez and his team? Is it breaking up with Anthony Durrell and his team? Is it breaking up with PBC and Al Heyman's crew, who's supposed to wrangle all these guys in? It's a damn shame that a professional fighter goes on social media, says he's fighting somebody, gives a date, gives a location, and then the opponent says, I don't know what you're talking about. This is the first time we've actually experienced that here in 2017. That actually happened with Artur Beterbiev and Sullivan Barrera, where Beterbiev's people had said there was a deal in place for a fight with Sullivan, and Sullivan Barrera was like, no, I never signed anything. Even his own promoter, Main Events, was like, yo, Sullivan, you signed something. He's like, no, I didn't. This is the kind of stuff that can happen. It's a real shame in boxing that this happens. So now we've got Julio Cesar Chavez looking like an idiot again, because he's calling out and saying on social media he's got fights that he clearly doesn't have. And we have an opponent in Anthony Durrell who's already got something else planned, and it's already in camp for a fight against a lesser opponent. Now, both of these gentlemen need to kind of get back on the horse. Truth be told, for Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., it would make the most sense for him to get a much lesser opponent. Anthony Durrell is still a very game fighter at 160 or at light heavyweight. He's still a very game fighter there in those divisions. So I'm not really sure where this fight was going to be contested at, but it just makes me scratch my head and wonder what in the hell is going on at PBC, to where you've got two different stories from two different fighters. It's a shame. Also, that same night, if he's planning on fighting in California on November the 11th, ESPN already has a card set up that weekend in Fresno, California, with Jesse Magdaleno defending his WBO title. So, and also, speaking of the devil, Artur Beterbiev is also going to be on that card now, IBF light heavyweight eliminator. So it's weird. It's very odd, but it's boxing anymore, and that's kind of where we're at, man. A lot of these things just don't make much of any sense. And when it comes to PBC, when it comes to their fighters, it never makes sense. And this is yet another point. We wonder why, and they wonder why we make fun of them so much. It's because of exactly stuff like this. This makes no sense. And, here we got two fighters, two different stories, and neither knowing, when their fights can be made completely official. So, best of luck to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Again, I could really care less if I ever see him fight again. As bad as that sounds, I really don't feel bad about saying that, but it's the truth. I mean, the effort that he gave against Canelo was atrocious, and it might even gave Canelo a false sense of hope that he could fight a bigger fighter, and he clearly couldn't. But again, it is what it is, man. It's very agitating to me in regards to Mike Jackson, yes, and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So yes, it is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. which I'm referring to. So Junior yet again is being Junior. That's probably the best way of describing it. We don't know what we're gonna do with Junior. We're stuck with him, unfortunately. Thank God his dad is still around. We like a Senior. We love Senior. Matter of fact, let me put it out there. We love Senior. Hell of a fighter. But Junior is just, I don't know. I don't get Junior. But let's see. That's pretty much all here for this week's show. I will say this, kind of give you a heads up into some things we've got down the pipeline here for Punch to Face Radio. Here next week, I will be joined by James Dominguez. Now, for those who aren't familiar with James Dominguez, he's actually the co-host of the Punchline Show with Kelly Pavlik, the former middleweight champion. Those two gentlemen do a great job talking boxing. So I'm going to have one half of that show come here and talk boxing with me. So James Dominguez is going to be a part of the show here next week. Here on the October 4th show, so 2 weeks from tonight, Adam Abramo will be back on the show, a.k.a. SN Boxing, a.k.a. MrSaturdayNightBoxing.com. He's going to be back on the show, and we're going to talk some kind of fall preview in regards to some of the fights we have coming on and happening here in 2017 here for the fall. And we are scheduled to be joined by one of the guys who's going to be kind of a part of a really big card that me and Adam are both kind of getting psyched and hyped about over in Brooklyn, the Barclays. We're going to be joined by Austin Trout, so a.k.a. No Doubt. So No Doubt Austin Trout is scheduled to be a part of the show here on October 4th to talk boxing with us and talk about his upcoming bout. So we are excited about that as well. And we got other things. We got other fighters out there we're trying to get out to and get them part here of the show, but you know how that goes. It's always fun trying to get a hold of, get fighters on and get a hold of them and get the schedules worked out. So we shall see, but we are working on that. But yeah, next week we got James Dominguez, and in 2 weeks, No Doubt Austin Trout, and the return of Adam Bromowitz. So we're always looking forward to having Adam on the show. Great guy, great co-host. So yeah, that's what we do here at Punch to Face Radio. I had to get my rant off here about Canelo Triple G. That's really all I have for this week. Couple of quick MMA notes. I didn't know MMA was still happening, and I say that sarcastically, but I honestly mean it. The weird thing is that we haven't seen a ton of promotion in regards to UFC events post Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather. And it's a shame because the UFC should have used that momentum from that card that they had and the publicity and the opportunity that they had, with that to spin and, promote their upcoming fights and some of their fighters. They didn't do that, which is a real shame and a discredit to those fighters. So it's weird. It's just really weird. There's a fight here on Friday, the 22nd, over in Japan that I, honest to God, didn't know was even happening until someone sent out a tweet about it, and some of the fights changing. There's a fight over in Japan. Oven St. Peru, he's going to be facing Yushin Okami now in the main event. Okami's replacing an injured Shogun Hua. Claudia Gadea is facing Jessica Andrade, which, honest to God, hell of a fight in the women's strawweight division. These two ladies can scrap. Gadea's thinking if she gets a win, she may be right back in another title fight down the line here in 2018. Tokyo Gomi versus Duncan Kim. And there's a lot of other Japanese fighters who are going to be featured there on the card since the card is from Japan. Again, I had no idea the fight was even happening until I saw some tweets here earlier this week. A real shame that UFC didn't use that momentum correctly. They have a UFC event here October the 7th that I kind of know a little bit about, but yeah, it's not a lot of push from them. There's also a Bellator card here on Saturday night. That'll be live on Spike TV. That's headlined by Benson Henderson versus Patricky Ferreira, or a.k.a. Pitbull. Paul Daly versus Lorenz Larkin. Roy Nelson, former UFC heavyweight, is going to be making his Bellator debut against JV Ayala. And Justin Lin versus Arian Pico. Pico was a guy that they had a lot of hype around. He was supposed to be this great hybrid guy who didn't go to college on a wrestling scholarship to instead pursue his MMA dream, and he got crushed in his first professional bout. So this is going to be a second go-round. Really interesting to see if he learns from that and see what happens with him after, all this hype from Bellator and he got crushed his first fight out. There's MMA this weekend, but it just seems like MMA is flying so far to the radar, especially UFC events. I thought they could have done a much better job using their momentum they had, and instead they didn't. So just wanted to touch on that slightly because we don't talk as much MMA here on the show anymore because a lot of MMA fans just don't care. The boxing fans are a lot more passionate about the sport, so that's neither here nor there. With that being stated, man, that's tonight's show. Quick show. We'll be back at it here next week. My voice is starting to go out anyway, so it's good timing. So, again, let's make sure that if you are listening here to on iTunes, thank you for listening and subscribing. As well, if you're listening here on Blog Talk Radio Live, you can always catch the show on iTunes at Punch, the number 2, the Face Radio. Search there. You can also find the show on YouTube at Punch to the Face Radio. You can find it all there. Just anytime in doubt, just type in Punch to the Face Radio. You'll find the show that way on many different media platforms. So thank you for listening. As I always say to everyone, I want everyone to stay safe, stay blessed. Until next Wednesday, I am out.
Progressive presents Mindfulness with Flow.
You are a mighty fortress of supreme knowledge. Progressive Direct has not only revealed their rates, but those of their competitors. If you were any more in the know, you would be drowning in, the know.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates, because knowledge is power. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.